Season, and that means it's bug season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas. And that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pet Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for OutDrank The Coverage in 2023. In turn knowing. When I think of the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants, this is what I think of.
On the game's first big play, it's because Emmitt took a handoff from Troy, and it was see you later. 60 yards for the touchdown, but not before the wave goodbye. 7-0 in favor.
Stretching out, getting your hands out there, making that catch, but then holding on to it. I mean, look at that.
Whoa, that's a heck of a...
This is sick. Put this to music. I don't think he stepped out either. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen.
Number 39.
This is our off-season series, OutDrank The Coverage, a look back. I am Terry Bennett. That's intern Noe. And this year's look back series will be the top 5 rivals of the Dallas Cowboys. This was a lot easier, I think, to put together than I thought it would be. Simply, I think a lot of it is because Dallas has been locked in the NFC East with the same teams since basically they started playing football. They're not one of the teams that have bounced around divisions or anything. And so that made it easy, but it also made it hard. And we'll talk about all that. But we're going to start, I think if you saw and you know, the top 5 rivals, we'll start with number 5, and that is the New York Giants. Before we do that, though, intern Noe, how do you do? And what do they drink?
I do fine. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
I am drinking something I haven't tried before. I've tried Jim Beam, but this is Jim Beam Single Barrel.
This was a very off-the-cuff move by you. You called an audible.
Yeah, I called an audible.
I mean, you looked at the defense and you went,
Here we go! Buck, here we go! Here we go!
No, yeah, this was definitely you at the liquor store.
Yeah, I was just looking to see. I have, I wanted to get something different. I want something I haven't tried. Now I have tried Jim Beam, but I haven't tried single barrel. Like this is just something that's just been aged in one barrel,
Yeah.
in one single barrel. Composition is 75% corn, and then the rest of the about 13% rye, 12% barley. It is a 108 proof, so 54% alcohol.
Now, and also, I do want to point out, you're in a part of the year where you religiously, basically, you don't eat a lot of, good stuff. And then you also, on Wednesdays and Fridays, you fast during the day. And over the last few years, I've partaked in this with you as a show of solidarity. It's days like this when I'm drinking and I really want a pizza that I'm going to go and say, you suck right now. You suck. So, no. But this means that 80 proof is going to kick a little harder, but 103 proof, you're staying over in the Noe bedroom tonight, aren't you? The Noe bedroom is just my bedroom. But,
yeah. But yeah, it's like apple-ish, kind of oaky, but it tastes good. It's one of those I would cut with water, but it's not bad. It's $30. Good. I think it's very undervalued.
Yeah.
So I know what you're drinking, but Terry, how are you? And what are you drinking?
I am drinking Good Night Loving. It has become my vodka of choice. Taco's still there, but if I can pay just a little bit more and get 3 times the quality, and I like to support Texas alcohol places, but and it's good. You've had it. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good, solid vodka. I contend that vodka is something you shouldn't have a hard time putting together, but apparently some do. But anyway, so we come together. We begin our first true off-season show of the OutDrank The Coverage series that we do. And I got to tell you, man, and you and I have talked about this before, I enjoy these as much as I do the regular season stuff, especially the topic that will be over this offseason, the top 5 Cowboy rivals. Every episode will be selected for that specific rival. Number 5 is the Giants. And basically, we're just going to show great, moments in the rivalry history. And we're fair. We're doing the top 5 Cowboy moments and the top 5 Giants moments. Now, maybe with the Eagles, we showed no good moments. Like every bad moment just be a decent moment, not a great moment. But no, we want to talk about this. And also, I think you and I come from, we're a perspective that we love the Cowboys and we hate the rivals, but we really don't. Like we respect a lot about the historical aspect of what the NFC East is. And I'm not a big SEC guy, but if I was going to be, it's the NFC East. I tend to root outside the Eagles. I tend to root for those teams in the playoffs. Not necessarily because of the NFC East, but it's because I have followed that team all year. You follow the teams that your team plays. And to be honest with you, half the time or even not more, it turns out they're pretty good team, pretty cool people and all that kind of fun stuff.
No, that is a good point. Even though you and I grew up during different times of the Cowboys and the NFC East rivalry, I did like seeing Washington, for example, in 2005 when they made the playoffs with Joe Gibbs and his return and Mark Brunell. They won their first round against the Buccaneers, and then they basically hung with the Seahawks for most of the game, lost a close game. But
was that the Chris Sims spleen game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I like the 99 Washington team when I know we're talking about the Giants, but not just them. They almost made it to the NFC title game. They lost that heartbreaking game to the Buccaneers in the divisional round.
Well, they've had some good games with Tampa.
Yeah, in the playoffs. It's just random.
I like the 99 Giant team or 2000 Giant team.
Yeah, the one that won the Super Bowl. Yeah, I like that team. I like some of those players like Seahorn and former Cowboy Dave Thomas was one of their
secondary
guys. So yeah, it's just a really good team. And I'm glad we're doing season 2 of a look back, and we're doing a different subject.
Yeah,
this is something that's very subjective. This is our top 5. You could add in other teams, and as we go along, I know people that are watching they'll have their own opinions. We chose these teams because consistently since 1960, when the Cowboys were formed, these were the 5 teams that probably were consistently a thorn on the Cowboys side and vice versa.
Well, and again, a lot of it is also just how good the NFC East is.
Yeah.
And the fact that, in this game or in this series, they've played 122? I'm off the top of my head. and the Cowboys lead the series 75-47-2.
Yeah.
I've never seen a Cowboy tie in my life.
I haven't either.
I don't even remember. I don't even know when the last Cowboy tie was.
But you and I are smart enough to know that in the regular season there are ties.
You hate that so much. That was like if you were to be on the board. We were talking about this earlier with Hall of Fame. If you were like if Noe says yes, you get in, and if Donovan McNabb came up, you'd be like, "Give me the rules of the tie." Oh, I don't know. Get out. You hate that they don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know you kind of argued a good point to support it, but I just can't support the fact that he played against a team that had a tie during the season in the playoffs, and he doesn't know.
Remember.
Yeah, that just is mind-boggling. It was the same year. Now, spoiler alert: Eagles will be on this top 5 list. Today we're talking about the Giants, but that 2008 season, that'll be a game we talk about when they beat Dallas in the season finale to make the playoffs. That was the same season where they tied against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So
that was basically, they had a half game up on Dallas. That was also one of the things you're going to learn much in these is because there's 3 of them, the 3 years in a row where Dallas lost to an NFC East team that if they win, they get in. And they went through the NFC East. It wasn't like, the Giants. It was literally Giants, then Philly, then Washington. I don't remember the exact order. But speaking of, though, so what we'll go ahead and do, and since we're kind of on this subject here, the first great win the great non-loss for the Cowboys is one of those ties, and that is the 1960 game as the Giants
found footage?
Yeah. You'd be surprised what you can find on YouTube. But this was literally the first non-loss in Cowboys history, as it was an exciting 31-31 game. I bring this up too first because one of the things that has been a little odd on this rivalry, looking at the numbers and stuff, is the longevity of the rivalry makes it big. It's an NFC East opponent. But, man, there have been long stretches where this game didn't mean anything. I mean, Dallas, and you're going to realize on most of these, Dallas has the winning record, but this one specifically, even in the Giants' big runs, the Eli Manning 2 Super Bowls, he was only 13-17 against Dallas. Even in the Phil Simms Giants, Dallas always seemed to be able to get one out of them every year. And so this rivalry doesn't have, it has impactful games, and we're getting into them, but it doesn't have, the fact that this is one of the top 5 games, it's the first non-loss in history. That's great, but this shouldn't be one of the games. But the impactful games just are very few in this series.
Yeah, and that's kind of why they're on the list at number 5.
Yes.
Good
point.
Yeah, it's a team that, so growing up, I just respected the team. I didn't hate them at all.
Now, again, I know we say it a lot, but this is what you have to do in these kind of shows, assuming people come to you, this is the first time they've ever heard. You became a football fan in
1993.
All right. So you didn't even grow up with the Giants of the 80s.
Correct.
Now, as I say this, and we talk about how this, as far as the other rivalries, this one's not as impactful, but for somebody who grew up in the 80s, the Giants always loomed large. We go back to, and again, we'll show some of these, but we go back to, started really in 81 when they got their first playoff victory or playoff clinching game. It was against Dallas end of the year. But we talk about 86, they make the Super Bowl. They beat the Broncos. Then the famous 89, they beat the Buffalo Bills. And so they're there for me. For me, they loom way bigger. Yeah. So this week when I was talking to my dad, big longtime Cowboy fan, I was like, hey, Dad, what are your reminiscent thoughts of the Giants? They sucked. Well, what about the 80s? They were okay, but they sucked. Okay, well, what about now? Yeah, they were okay for a while, but then they still sucked. He just has no, I asked my dad, hey, Dad, talk about the Eagles. He'll talk about that 80 game and how bullshit. And we got screwed. And that game should have been in Dallas. And, but for the Giants, he just doesn't have that. That doesn't hang over him.
Yeah, it's just funny. This game, it was Landry's first game or first season. Had a little Barron at quarterback.
That's before Don Meredith.
I'm trying to think of when your dad was watching this, what he thought overall. This is like saying a team sucks. That's One, subjective. Two, is there's a little bit of hate there too.
Yeah.
So
Contempt, I think, is a better word.
Okay, that's a good one.
I don't
like going into the 60 game, the Giants had a great run in the 50s. Jimmy Lee Howlett coach, Sam Huff linebacker.
Genuinely considered one of the great teams of the NFL history, that era.
One of the games that brought a wider audience to football was the 58 championship game against the Baltimore Colts that went into overtime, the first overtime game. It was televised. They've since digitally remastered it.
It looks great.
Yeah.
Dude, it looks great. I go back to that a lot. Being at night makes the colors pop.
Those Giant teams were great. They had they had the market, they had the style they played.
They had a great coaching staff.
They had great coaching. Yeah, great coaching staff. They had a pretty good defensive coordinator there named Tom Landry.
Think about that. If you were to think of Landry and Vince, I would assume that Landry would be your offensive coordinator.
Yes.
Even though both could do both. Again, This is a different era. Landry.
To clarify, Vince, you mean is Vince Lombardi?
Yeah, sorry. head coach of the Green Bay Packers. He was on staff with this job. Generally consider one of the great coaching staffs.
Yeah.
Not only because of that fact that they combined won 4 Super Bowls and all that, but just the revolutionizing of football. Both of them had such a big part of that. Yep. Things that are done now were created by them, like the 4-3. I mean, literally, Landry created the 4-3 because Sam Huff was an amazing linebacker. He wanted to protect him more, get blockers off of him. Yeah. So he created that extra level of defensive tackles. Then you look at the fact that he created the offense to then beat the 4-3. And so, I mean, this whole Giant team of the 50s, I mean, it's not quite success-wise like the Patriots or even the Cowboys of the 70s, but like they're one of the most talked about teams of that era.
And therein lies the problem. Like, they were great in the 50s, but all those players started getting older toward the early to mid part of the 60s. And that's when Dallas started finally figuring it out. Because I think it took the Cowboys 5 or 6 years. And going back to our look back of last season, when we looked back at all 5 Super Bowl teams, those early Cowboy teams, the 60s, they were not good. I think they finally got to 500 around 65.
Yeah.
And then they were actually contenders by 66. So, around that time, the Giants started fading. So, the reason why the Giants are 5 on this list is because most of the good games happened, a couple in the 80s, but then a lot was, during the Eli years with him and Romo going back and forth.
Yeah, and, you had put it on the sheet. I think you said 2007 to 2015 or something, and I would contend you just go 2007 to 2017. That felt like, and we're going to do this thing here in a minute and I'll explain it, but that felt like that was the high point for that rivalry because because they never really swept each other. I think Eli swept the Cowboys once. I think Romo swept the Giants twice. You then also had the fact that those games meant something, and we're going to see those a lot when we're pointing out the best Giants games. But I want to go back to the Giants and Landry. And I think maybe this is part of why this rivalry is where it's at too, intensity-wise. I think Landry just respected the Giants so much. I mean, that's where he played his whole career. Yep. And then he was a player coach, and then he was a coach. And so I think part of the reason is he never wanted that. He never wanted the hateful or that type of thing. Plus, him and Parcells respected the hell out of each other. Then Dan Reeves, now he wasn't there with Landry, but Dan Reeves becomes the Giants coach in the 90s. That had that Cowboy connection.
He was a fullback or running back for the Cowboys?
Yeah, he was a player coach too for 2 years.
Yeah.
He was that again with Landry. You go look at their outside of Newhouse, their fullbacks usually were just pass catching running backs.
Yeah.
But I mean, he coached with Landry for 12 years before he became a head coach with the Giants. He still leaned on Landry so much. I think that's part of the reason why he kind of had a little bit of the test for Jimmy Johnson was part of that. He was that, you fired a man that shouldn't have been fired. There will be an episode, a look back at Landry being fired eventually. Cause that's one of those weird things for me because anyway, but you just, when you look at these games, it really was hard for us to find 10 games, 5 for each side that were impactful to the point where you felt like talking about them. And yet they're the 5th
in the rankings, and they're kind of over a couple of other teams that maybe, that's debatable, but the longevity of this series, that's still since 1960.
Yeah.
One of the longest series going. It's literally like it's like the Vikings, the Bears, the Packers, the Vikings, those, and then all the NFC East. Those are the core longest run, because those are all the teams. And it's not even like Dallas was still considered a young team compared to a lot of these teams. But, the longevity's there. But I don't know. I just never felt the Giants, a couple times in the 2000s. But again, it was so they got each other so evenly. It kind of just, it evened out, I guess is the way. I never felt like Dallas, even when the Giants were making the 2 Super Bowls, I never felt like Dallas was looking up to the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, those Giant Super Bowl teams with Eli in 07 and 2011, they were 10-6 and 9-7 respectively. Yeah. So you knew they were talented, and when they won and they showed those flashes of brilliance that they were elite, it's just their record was never elite. They had that one season in 08 where they were 12-4. They started out 11-1, and they got bounced in the division round by the Eagles.
Yeah.
That same year we were referencing earlier, 08. The Giants had just spurts of really good eras where they were really good. In the 80s, they started getting good, but that was after basically from 63 to 81. Yeah, they just were not good.
That was their more consistent stretch. Yeah. And I know there's 2 Super Bowls in each one, but again, the Eli Giants were up and down.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even, again, make the case that the 2 Super Bowl years, it took them winning upsets in 07 and then winning on the last day of the season to, so the Giants of the 80s were way different. Like from 81 to 90, those Giants, I mean, they just play tough.
Yeah.
You think of them in 89 against the 49ers and just, ending that 3-peat chance. You think of them as one of the few teams that could go toe-to-toe with Chicago physical-wise and not back down. And that's hard to do. That Chicago team were making Super Bowl teams look soft, yet the Giants felt like they were the one team that went in and stood toe-to-toe with them.
And they matched up well, and they did have bigger guys than the Bears.
Yeah,
and they were just mean and angry. I mean, you've seen Lawrence Taylor on the sideline chewing out referees, chewing out his own team, so
chewing out his dealer.
So yeah, those Giant teams had an edge to them, and I think that kind of symbolized their head coach too. I think.
Oh yeah,
when he was buying the groceries, aka the players, he got players that were more to his mold.
Parcells, though, I don't think people understand. There was a lot more flash to the Giants than people think. Like Parcells kind of leaned into the old school, bring your lunch pail, but he also kind of liked the Lawrence Taylor pizzazz. And I know I referenced to you personally and on this show a lot, but there's a book that basically talks about him, Gibbs, and Walsh, and how they revolutionized football at a different point. Oh, excuse me. OutDrank The Coverage. How they revolutionized football and how they did it. And that's one of the things he always talked about was, I wanted my guys to be tough as nails, but I also wanted them to have a little bit of attitude and come out with a little bit of a walk. And, it wasn't keep your head down and work hard. It was, I want everybody to know how great we are. But you're talking about Eli. And so I guess we'll start off one of the great Giant games. And this is actually one of the few ones that kind of irked me, and you'll see why. But in 2009, Eli decided he wanted to leave his lasting name on and in AT&T Stadium, and he did just that. And this game right here, got to get this all right. This game right here, again, this is one of the few ones that, I'll admit, bothered me. Because, dude, Dallas had just lost to Baltimore to end Texas Stadium, man. Yeah. As sometimes as I try to defend Jerry Jones, the thing I will never defend him for is 08. Now, this season, 2009, ended up way better.
Yeah.
But 08, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, if he would have had the ability that he does now to let other people draft, I just feel like we could have a completely different era in that stretch, including maybe, the Giants not winning one Super Bowl or even two. But going back to this game, man, I really thought Dallas was going to do this. I really, this one bothers me.
Yeah, 09. So 07, they had the number 1 seed, lost in the playoffs to the Giants. Going into 08, they had a lot of expectations. They started off hot. Romo gets hurt for a couple of games.
3 games.
They go 1-2. They have a pretty crappy win against the Buccaneers.
That was ugly, man.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Old Brad Johnson came back to haunt John Gruden and the Bucs.
Noodle Arm Johnson.
So they end up finishing 9-7. They had a crushing season finale loss to the Eagles. When we get to the Eagles rivalry show, look back, that'll be on my list of biggest Eagles.
List.
Yeah, biggest Eagles win, just because of how that season turned out. But so that's the context going into 2009. The Cowboys were closing Texas Stadium in Irving, Texas. They lost their last game to Baltimore, like you mentioned, in heartbreaking fashion. Kind of led them to missing the playoffs. But they had a loaded team. They still were good enough. Their defense improved.
I forgot. I'm sorry. This was the foot interception.
Oh.
Off of Witten's foot, and the Giants get the interception.
So watching the Cowboys during the Witten era, he would deflect so many balls that turned into interceptions.
He really would.
I think there has to be a record for that.
That he could. He would, and it might even happen in this game on 3rd and shorts. He would just immediately. I mean, think about the Seattle playoff game. He'd immediately just fall down.
Mm.
Like that's why I never. Everybody thinks of that one Eagle game. His helmet gets ripped off, and that was a great play. But Jason Witten was not a break tackles tight end. He was a find a spot, sit down, catch it, fall down, and that's fine. But there was a couple times in his career where, like, dude, if you just fall forward, like the things that we expect players to do. But anyway, back into this game. We keep doing this. This was one of the few Romo bad games. He had 3 interceptions. Yeah. Again, though, one of them off the foot, so you can't. Eli was beautiful, 25 of 38, 330 yards and 2 touchdowns. Marion Barber, the late, and I keep forgetting that. Marion Barber, the late, great Marion Barber, 124 yards and 1 touchdown on only 18 carries. Wow. I mean, this game, this is one of those games people, and fairly can do it. They point to Romo, especially because Romo had a good bad game to close Texas Stadium.
Yeah.
Now, he threw Dallas back into that game 100 times, but he kept throwing bad interceptions too. And so this was right at that peak of Romo can't win big games. Romo can't do it against good opponents. And again, deservedly so in this one, because if Romo throws one less interception, they probably win, as they ended up losing on a last-second field goal, 33-31. And then infamously, I like this. I think this is great. Eli Manning decided to sign the locker room wall in permanent marker. I hope Jerry didn't paint that over. Sometimes you just have to eat the crow. But that's the kind of stuff I love in a rivalry right there.
So this would be number 5 in your top 5 Giant wins.
I didn't rank them.
Oh, okay.
They're 5.
I mean, if so, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think 5's a good spot.
Yeah. So yeah, like Terry said, we ranked each top Giant win over the Cowboys and each Cowboy win over the Giants, and we just listed the top 5, and then we have a couple of honorable mention. But if we were actually ranking them, I would probably put this 5 on the list, just because of the ramifications that happen. Because if remember, the Giants actually used this to get off to a 5-0 start that season, and everybody was thinking Giants. Okay, 08, they finished 12-4, get the number 1 seed. Crushing loss in the playoffs. They're just carrying the momentum. They're still elite team.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they crater the rest of the season. They lose 8 out of 11, finish 8-8. Meanwhile, Dallas overcomes this, uses a strong defense and like a career year from Anthony Spencer. They finish 11-5. They beat the Eagles 3 times that season. You and I were both very hopeful. Like it was the year before you and I met. We were very hopeful going to that Viking game in the divisional round, and then
Doug Free.
Yeah, one mistake basically turned that around.
Doug Free, love Doug Free, but he had a terrible game.
Yeah,
he had a terrible game. By the way, real quick, I want to point out before we, because show just goes off the rails. If you look down, I'm pointing it on the mouse like other people can see this. Only you and I can. We have a Cowboy micro helmet with the Cleveland Browns. Now, here's why. We have honorable mention of the top 5 rivals, but we wanted to be a little different. And we wanted to, spread them out and not like give all the honorable mentions at once. So we decided to do it by decades. It worked out perfect. We're having 5. Now, so one of the decades is 2000 to now. I know that's 24 years, but for some reason, I was thinking about this the other day. I wonder if the 1900 people feel this way. Everything from the 2000s now just feels like it was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Everything just feels like it was 10 years ago. But our first honorable mention is, and there's only one, because again, the Cowboys didn't do a lot in the 60s. And one of them that would be the most obvious is probably going to be on the list. So if you want to do the whole deduction, you realize Green Bay is also going to be on this list, so they'll get their own episode later. And in this honorable mention, this episode, it'll be pretty quick. Now, there are some great in the 70s. We got a lot to talk about. Hell, I'll go ahead and spoil it. Houston Oilers, they're an honorable mention. That could be its own show. You and I have even talked about we might want to go ahead and do like a mini show, which that just means we'll do a full show on the Cardinals because they deserve a special spot. Because, folks, there was a time when you want to talk about thorn in the side of a team, it was the Cardinals to the Cowboys. So the honorable mention now is only one, and it's the Cleveland Browns, and it's mainly because everybody in their mind, and I do too, you think, okay, Cowboys lose to the Packers back-to-back years, and then they go to the Super Bowl. Yep. And that's not how it was. They lost back-to-back years, and then they went a couple years where they kept getting beat in the playoffs. And the Cleveland Browns a couple times, especially Jim Brown, just absolutely dominated Dallas. Yep. And so in a decade that there's really not a lot of teams that stood out, at least that aren't going to already be on the list, the Cleveland Browns are our 60s honorable mention.
Yeah, I have to look back. In the 60s, the Browns were actually really, really good.
Oh, yeah. Again, you look at what them and the Giants and the Browns now and you laugh, but my dad, he can talk Browns all day long like that. He knew them.
So you and me both. I mean, him and I both, because think about it. They started in 46. They were in the other football league. I forgot the name of it.
AAFA or something like that. Yeah.
So from 46 to 56, they played in a championship. One there, like, so the first few years it was in that league. And then when they got moved over into the NFL, they started off their NFL careers in the championship game. Otto Graham, Paul Brown, a head coach, Otto Graham at quarterback. It was just a great team. It was a little dynasty, 46 to 56. They went they won 7 championships. They went to 10 of them, 10 seasons. And then after that, Graham retired, but then they got a running back by the name of Jim Brown. And from 56 to 65, there was no one on earth that was better than Jim Brown. And he's still considered today, rest in peace, one of the greatest NFL players of all time, regardless of position. He retired early in 65. The prior year, 64, they won a championship.
Yep.
Now, the Cleveland Brown franchise, they've never won a Super Bowl. They won that championship 2 years before the first Super Bowl got started. Yep. But after Jim Brown retired, they were still very competitive. They had Paul Warfield for a while until he went to the Dolphins at wide receiver. And they were still competitive for the rest of the 60s.
Leroy Kelly, who might have been as good as Jim Brown.
Yeah. But this coincided with the time when the Cowboys finally figured it out. And 65, they were 500, 66, and 67. They played in the NFC Championship game against the Packers both years. Won at the Cotton Bowl. They lost in the goal line stand by the Packers. The 67 was the famous Ice Bowl game where they scored on 4th and goal. Mm-hmm. And then 68 and 69, they were next year's champs. Okay, everybody thought the Cowboys were going to make it to the Super Bowl. They got stomped by the Browns both years.
Yeah, in 67. I'm sorry, in 68, Cleveland beat Dallas 31-20, and then in 69, they beat Dallas 38-14. And those, if you weren't alive during the time, everybody assumes the next year's champion got hung on them again with the Packers, but it wasn't. Everybody's like, dude, that's the Packers. Yeah. Like you played two great, classic, amazing games against one of the greatest franchise runs in history. And so the next year's didn't start till the Browns, because then it was like, okay, now you're backtracking. And how many times do we see that? How many times do we you and I joke all the time, the San Diego chart, Marty San Diego Chargers.
Yep.
The Marty Kansas City Chiefs. These teams that they would reach.
The Browns. The Marty and the Browns.
That's what I said. The Browns, the Chiefs, and
the Chargers.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, you're right. Damn. Shit. I forget sometimes it's three of them.
He had to have a team for each decade. So the 80s was the Browns, 90s was the Chiefs, 2000s was the Chargers.
So,
rest in peace.
Rest in peace. God, man, we keep saying it a lot.
Yeah.
But, when you look at those peaked, and immediately as they started backsliding, they get fired.
Yeah.
Dallas, whether it's foresight or what else are we going to do, they hung with Landry for the first 5 years. Then they hung with Landry through the next 5 years to where they were not breaking through.
Yeah.
And they allowed Landry to kind of go, okay, let's step back. Of course, Don Meredith retires early. He can't handle the pressure. I mean, immediately. I'm not trying to be. He said that.
Yeah.
And they were able to retool. I don't think a coach would be given that much time nowadays.
And you brought this up. I don't know if it was on the show or off air, but you brought that up where in today's NFL, Landry would have been gone about 3 seasons.
Oh yeah, even as a brand new expansion team, he would have been gone in year 5 if they're not winning.
So Meredith retired in '68. That was after the first Browns loss, and then they had Craig Morton, and then Staubach I think came back from the Navy, and so
yes,
but it was Morton starting for the first couple of years there. 70 they finally broke through. They finally won the NFC title game, made it to the Super Bowl. This was again a team we're going to probably talk about in our rival show. It was a string of 3 straight years they played the 49ers, and they beat them in the NFC title game, went to the Super Bowl, Blunder Bowl, Super Bowl 5, and then finally 71 season.
All this to talk Cowboys Giants. This is why we're a great show, because hey, just watch what paths we're about to jump off of, because we're going to go far away. But I do want to bring this up. Great segue into, we keep talking about the beginning of the Cowboys run with Tom Landry. Here is, in what I consider the greatest NFL season of all time. Everything was perfect in the world in this year, because I'm 10 at this time. But the 1985, and I have talked about this with you since like day one. You and I were talking earlier. There's some all-season shows we want to do, and some of it's like our favorite, like your 5 favorite Cowboys, our 5 favorite games, things like that. And I've told you, not only in football, but 85, and it's not because I was 10. That's the whole point. You're coming to age. Memories are starting to completely connect. That nostalgia is kicking in. But in saying that, the 1985 Dallas Cowboys season is probably up there with 03 Cowboys, 2 of the most improbable seasons of success that the Cowboys have had. This one especially, because everything about the Cowboys at this point was they're too old, schemes are too outdated, all that fun stuff. But in 1985, they pulled off the most perfect Heckle and Jekyll, where they beat everybody in the NFC East except for, I think, the Cardinals. I think they split with the Cardinals. They might have split with Philly, but they swept the 2 important ones, Washington and Dallas, or Giants, and yet would get beat 44-0 by the Bears, or get beat 56 to 28 by the Bengals, and like 90% of that 28 was when the game was already decided. So I think that's maybe. I enjoy this season so much because it's one of the few times as a kid that the Cowboys were legitimate underdogs. Like, they were the bring the lunch pail, work hard, play everything close to the vest and get out of there with wins. And we've never seen Dallas like that again, maybe except for the 03 one. But anyway, the 1985, we could really have pulled either one of these games, because both the 1985 Giants games were pretty big. Dallas won both of them, but it came down to Dallas hosting the Giants. And as I say on the title, this is legitimately the very true last ride, and we'll talk about why, for the Cowboys and Landry. This is their last playoff team. Now, it is fitting that they got absolutely destroyed by the Rams in the playoffs. But going back to that book, Bill Parcells admits that this 85 team, they just kind of Landry'd everybody. Like he said, me and Gibbs were both still at that, like, man, we're coaching against Tom Landry. We got to make sure everything's right. And he goes, you leave that one mistake, and it would be the mistake you think. We had a coach once tell me and Grant that football success, sports success, is not your best player. It's hiding your weakest player. And Parcells basically was like, no matter what we did, Landry knew how to find the weakest player on the team. And in this game, it was perfectly the same way. Dallas scores first, and the Giants look like they're going to be in control. And then the Giants just kind of start turning the ball over and start kind of jacking with things. And that defensive line, as you're about to see one of my top 5 playoff, I'm not going to say anything. Just watch this gold.
Oh, wow.
This is a guy who was instrumental on the 90s Super Bowl team. People forget where Jim Jeffcoat was before the Super Bowls.
They forget how old he was by
Exactly.
that time. Yeah, because he was.
And then he still went and played at Buffalo for a couple years after.
Yeah, 96.
People forget about that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't count that, but anyway. But yeah, for me as a kid, this is 100% nostalgia. But you've even looked at the 85 Cowboys. I still remember like 10 years ago, I think it was right when you and I started getting in all the big pro football reference deep dives.
Yeah.
You even were like, dude, that is the weirdest season ever. I'm like, I know, right? That's why it's so awesome. Because you legitimately didn't know what you're going to get from the Cowboys. They might pull off the upset against Washington, or they might get beat 72-0. And I want to tell you something right now. I know this is off topic, but Bears, you want to talk about the most physical, brutal game I ever saw? 85. What they did to Dallas. I remember that's the game that Mike Ditka literally was in tears in the locker room because he beat his mentor so bad. Think about that.
Yeah, if you for those that don't remember, Mike Ditka is a Hall of Fame tight end, believe it or not. He started with the Bears, then eventually toward the end of his career, the Bears were not really good in the 60s. He went to the Cowboys.
He was also an Eagle.
Yes, he was also an Eagle. He was also an Eagle, yes. But he ended up winning his Super Bowl with the Cowboys as a player.
Got a touchdown in the first. In fact, I think that was Rodgers' first touchdown of the Super Bowl.
I believe so, yeah. But then he transitioned to coaching and became a successful coach, especially in the 80s with the Bears. Ended up winning a Super Bowl. But the 85 season, they ended up playing the Cowboys in Texas Stadium. This was the famous 85 Chicago Bears, where their defense after week 4 found their groove, and they were just a team that just could not be stopped. And except for that Monday night game against the Dolphins. They destroyed the Cowboys. I think it was a shutout, right?
Yeah, it's 44-0.
Yeah.
Like it was all over Sports Illustrated. It was the first time that you start. And I know the Cowboys had missed the playoffs in 84, but people need to realize they were still a good team in 84.
That 84 season, that could be another look back.
Yeah, it really could. And it will be eventually.
It was one or two plays. Because basically Washington and the St. Louis Cardinals were fighting for the division. It was a de facto division championship game. Week 17, I guess. Week 17, 18. Both teams went in there, I think 9-6. Or no, Washington was 10-5. Cardinals were 9-6. Cardinals win, they win the division. They were up, I think 28-27. Washington storms back, gets a field goal, wins the division. And that was probably the tightest contested division title in the NFC East.
And you will learn why the Cardinals have to be talked about at some point, because you want to talk about teams that didn't make the playoffs, but were, if you put them in any other division a few times. Anyway, I paused the video because this right here on 4th down, I love the old lady. I bet she's not alive anymore.
Wow. I mean, it was like 40 years ago, so probably not.
But on 4th down, here was the big play that won the division for the Cowboys.
Great play.
Interception. Victor Scott. But yeah, again, this was a lot. You didn't know it in the moment. In fact, I'll go ahead and do it now. This became the last gasp of the Dallas Cowboys because a year later, this happened.
This is one of the top 5 Giant wins over the Cowboys, and you'll see why on this one play.
And this is, dadgummit, hang on.
Gosh
Gosh
darn it.
It's not like I don't have this, because I have this on loop, because as amazing as that Jim Jeffcoat touchdown was, as happy as little Terry was running around in his Dallas Cowboy pajamas, the very next year, God showed me why he hates me. And it's right here. I'm just going to set the scene. Dallas and the Giants come into this game both at 6-2. Both are literally like, hey, these are the best teams in the NFL.
And the Cowboys had already won the first matchup between the two.
In fact, I think that was on Monday night. But they'd already won the first one. Dallas could lose this game and be fine. Like, this is literally one of we only don't want one thing to happen. And as long as that one thing doesn't happen, Dallas is going to be fine. Dallas is going to be a Super Bowl contender. And then this happened. Carl Banks breaks Danny White's wrist.
Danny White went
I just
into
loop it.
Danny White went into this game as an MVP favorite.
So Danny White, and again, I know we keep saying this, we will have a show on Danny White, but Danny White had a little bit of that Romo in him.
Yes.
He was very much a gunslinger. There's the famous couple times where he went for it, the Danny no. There's another famous one against the Giants too. I can't remember what year it was. But anyway, he's about to call an audible, and Tom Rafferty, the center, literally pulls his head up and says, "Danny, please don't." And that was against Washington, and Danny does it anyway. So he had a little bit of that gunslinger. And so one of those was he threw a lot of interceptions. Now, again, this is a different era.
Yeah.
Folks, this is an era where if you threw 30 touchdowns, I'm not going to say it was okay that you threw 20 interceptions, but it wouldn't be, okay, he throws a lot of interceptions, but he throws a lot of touchdowns. This season was literally like Romo 2014. He'd cut down his interceptions. Yeah. He was finding all the right targets, all that. And then again, Carl Banks ends it all with this hit as he breaks Danny White's wrist. The game still, a lot of people forget that this game only ended 17-14. But it wasn't even the game at this point. Yeah, I looped it.
So, as shaky as the 85 season was,
it was different in 86, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I really don't remember why.
Their defense wasn't good, but their offense was on fire that it didn't really matter. So,
well, and that defense in that era, you and I have talked about this before. It's one of those things that I go, man, I really started pulling the stats back. The Cowboy defense wasn't great from 81 to 86. Now, they might put up some great numbers, but what they were great at was blitzing and interceptions. Yeah. And so but they had married that well with this offense that it felt like, now also Tom Landry had started, he had used a passing game coordinator in Paul Hackett.
Yeah.
First time he'd given up control of the offense, and it was working. Like until Danny White got hurt, legitimately, this felt like.
And yes, Paul Hackett is the father of Nathaniel Hackett, former Bronco coach.
And Paul Hackett was basically a lot like Nathaniel, except for he got more chances. Considered a genius, kind of weird, hard to work with, seemed to fit better in the offensive coordinator role than the head coaching role.
But with the right quarterback, they looked so good.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So, a little bit of backstory on this. Going back to 85, the reason why I started looking at it that season was because of you.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, you know what? The thing that stuck out to me was if they had just won like one or two of those capable wins, they would have had a 2 seed and had a much easier path to the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. No, you're not wrong on that.
But yeah, going to 86, this was a scary team. Now, the Giants ended up, they went into this game 6-2. They ended up finishing the season 14-2. So they never lost another game after that. So considering that if Danny White had finished the season, Lawrence Taylor would not have been MVP that season. And I think it would have been Danny White. And I think the Giants might not have made it to the Super Bowl.
I legitimately think Dallas is. I think these teams play again in the playoffs.
Just like, so what ended up happening was it was the Washington, back then Redskins, playing the Giants in the NFC title game. Giants overmatched them with their power. And the rest is history. The Washington ended up having a great decade.
I think we just saw the first Gatorade shower.
I thought, because it didn't. So the first Gatorade shower, a lot of people attribute it to the Super Bowl that later this season, Super Bowl 21, between the Giants and the Broncos. But actually, they started doing it during the season. That might have been the first one.
I think this might have been the first one. And again, this was, Bill Parcells has talked about this. This was the pivotal moment, in his opinion, of why the Giants became the Giants through the rest of the 80s.
Yeah.
They went from being a really good team that, couldn't quite get through it, or they just got beat by a better team.
Yeah.
Tell when I drink, my nose gets red. I'm like Rudolph. But yeah, for Dallas, they won one more game that year. They beat the Chargers a few weeks later.
Fluky, yeah. It was they started 6-2, finished 7-9.
Yeah, and a lot of these weren't close. They were losing to some not great teams. It just was a completely different offense. Yeah. And it never, look, again, show for another day. Tom Landry never trusted Danny White. In fact, you could say the one weakness of Tom Landry, which is a lot like a great offensive minds. I think of Steve Spurrier. they can never be happy with their quarterback because their quarterback can't be perfect. You got lucky if you're a Cowboy fan that some really great quarterbacks dropped into the Cowboys' lap.
Yeah.
But one of the big weaknesses he has, he just could not settle. He always was looking for better. And he always kind of had a love-hate for White. And this game and how it ended and how this was the end of the Cowboys as Landry. We didn't know it in the moment. I know 87, it's what, 7-8? 7-8?
They were 7-8, yeah. But
it wasn't
two of those
good.
wins were replacement players.
Yes. And it wasn't, it just, you knew then.
Yeah.
You knew then. But anyway, so that's, the Giants kind of became team B of the 80s. I think you think of San Francisco, obviously, Washington, and the Giants. I think the Washington, and I know the Bears loom large, but that's just one season.
Yeah, they had a lot of great regular season performances, but they only had the one Super Bowl.
Exactly. And so, the Giants were one of those three teams. And again, you go back to 86. And I'm not saying it completely changes. The Giants are still competitive. Hell, the Giants might have beat Dallas in the playoffs. Yeah. But I do think that I think it started the Super Bowl year, the era off for Bill Parcells a year early. I will contend all day, every day that this 86 Cowboy team was better than the 86 Giants team. Just, they were better. Some of it being last veteran gasp because you would never see them, do that again. But
I mean, this is big on the list. I mean, just think of the ramifications.
Oh yeah. If we were ranking these, this might be the top win for the Giants. Well, I don't know, man.
Up to that point, it was.
Okay. 07 divisional obviously wins because, and we'll talk about that. 07 divisional because it's a playoff game, but regular season game, I think this is the biggest win in the rivalry for the Giants.
If I have to rank all five, like obviously 07 and then 2011 because of what it triggered for that team going forward, and then this one is big. I mean, it kind of made those two teams go in different directions. Like the point you were going. Giants ended up, and they missed the playoffs the next year, but they got good in 88, really good in 89. They won another Super Bowl in 90. Meanwhile, the Cowboys fired Landry 2 seasons later.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to hit that. But let's go ahead and do that. So, talking about the great Bill Parcells, in 2003, he said, "Hey, Giants, you remember that time y'all came into Meadowlands and I helped you beat the Cowboys? Well, I'm on the Cowboys side now, and I'm about to do this." And this was, there are certain games that we all remember where we were, that old thing. I remember exactly where I was for this game. This game, now some of the minutia I didn't remember until watching this for this show. Like, I forget that the Cowboys had a comfortable lead. Like, the Cowboys should have won this going away.
Yeah.
And it took, the Giants come back, and it took some miracle stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about this earlier. But I dare say, was this the greatest Quincy Carter game of the Cowboys in his short term? I think of the Carolina win the same year. And I think the Giants. I think those are the two. Like, I don't really think of any other game where he, you go, man, that was Quincy Carter. He did that.
That is a good question. Maybe the Carolina game.
That's what I said. The Carolina game in regular season. He beat Carolina twice in the regular season. They lost in the playoffs, but he beat Carolina twice in his term as a regular season. But, oh, wow, Al Singleton. Forgot about him.
Really solid linebacker.
Tampa linebacker.
Yeah. I'm looking at the 03 Cowboys. That was the one season Quincy Carter started the whole year. Detroit, he had a great game. They won at Detroit 38-7 to start the season 5-1, and then they kind of started.
Dallas?
Yeah. So I mean, the offense was humming at this point. But yeah, this was a game, and to me, this is top 5 Cowboy win against the Giants for the same reason the '86 one was for the Giants as they beat the Cowboys. It kind of started a chain reaction. Actually, and I would argue with you that the Giants losing this
was the best thing that happened
to them.
I knew where you were going with that. Yeah.
Because, as we're watching the highlights, what happens after this, they have a very good veteran team, like a lot of talent, Tiki Barber, Kerry Collins, Jeremy Shockey. What ends up happening is their long-term coach, John Fossil, they have a bad year, and they're like, okay.
You know what I'm about to say now?
You want to go ahead and say it?
Well, no, rest in peace, John Foster.
Oh, rest in peace, John
Again,
Foster.
dude, we've
yeah.
said that like 6 times.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
This was 21 years ago.
Yep.
It's crazy. He ends up getting fired. He had led the team to a Super Bowl appearance, division titles, but they had to look at the franchise had to look at all their best players were getting old.
Yeah.
They need to go a different direction.
Yep.
But that was a
right.
good, But the next year they hired Tom Coughlin. They get what is appeared to be a declining Kurt Warner from the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
They draft Eli. Well, no, wait. They trade for Eli Manning. The Chargers drafted Eli Manning.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history. They Tom Coughlin's first year, they start 6-10 in 2004, but Manning starts the rest of the season. That was kind of controversial at the time. We can talk about it more if you want, but they started 5-4 with Kurt Warner in playoff contention.
Yeah, he was terrible.
But they were in contention.
But he was terrible.
But Coughlin, to his credit,
he saw he was terrible.
No, he saw the long-term goal.
Well, I don't think it was long-term. Kurt Warner was...
But they had a winning record.
But, okay, so I know us fans, and I don't mean just you, but like fans, we get into that. Coaches don't. That's the one thing I've learned covering this sport and talking with coaches. A lot of the perceptions we see, like, oh, he's a winner. Coaches will be like, well, go back to the Brian Billick watching Trent Dilfer during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So for years, nobody realized that they had all this footage of video of just on Billick. They had a camera on audio on him. And in a Super Bowl where they really weren't in being like, it never was in doubt. He is absolutely hating this game because Trent Dilfer is playing so bad at quarterback. I think Coughlin saw that with Warner. So, yeah, give him credit for the long term. But I also think in the moment, it's like, Kurt Warner's terrible. What are we going to lose to play Manning?
But fans were not happy with it initially.
Oh, no, because, again, they were ahead. They were up 5-4.
Because they had such a bad 2003 season.
Yes.
They were just wanting any kind of positives.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that. In the moment, we're all like that. But anyway, so I wanted to show this. So, in a crazy end... I forgot about the controversial pass interference. The Giants go up 30-29 with like 15 seconds left. Oh, dadgummit, I messed up. Hang on.
Did you drink again?
Okay, here we go. Oh, no, that's overtime.
Spoiler alert.
Okay, so here we go. You ruined my viewing of this 2003 game. So anyway, so they kicked this field goal. I want to go back to this because this is it. Oh, no, dadgummit, that's the wrong one. Spoiler alert. So there it is. So anyway, so watch this. This is pass interference. On 4th down, that's pass interference.
Yeah.
It must be conspiracy. I bet it was scripted. But anyway, so the Giants score here with I'm sorry, this is a little bit ahead of time. Sorry, the thing got all mixed up with the thing. So here we go. 2 minutes. They're driving.
The thing got mixed up with the thing.
Shut up. Okay, so here we go. So Parcells celebrating, they kicked the field goal. Just spoiler alert, it happened. So the Giants kick off. First mistake is it goes out of bounds.
That's a big no-no in this situation for any kicker.
Yeah, for people that don't know, the ball goes out to the 35 or at the spot if it's past the 35. So you're talking about the difference and then the Cowboys at best probably starting at the 20. Now getting to start at the 35, and then this is what happened. And I contend, and I'm going to say this right now, this isn't the first time. I'm sorry, out to the 40. That's right, because I think it actually changed that year. It used to be the 35, and I think it was literally that year they went to the 40.
As you know, when we have our happy hour next week,
yeah,
there's a big kickoff
rule change
that we're probably going to spend a good 20, 30 minutes talking about.
Oh, easy. All right, so anyway, so Dallas has 11 seconds. I know this isn't the first time. I'm not trying to say that, but I am saying this is the first time in the modern era where you realize you can, if you just need to kick a field goal, you have 11 seconds and you're in decent field goal position or different position. You just need one pass. Before this, a lot of teams would already be trying Hail Marys right now. Yeah. Like, hey, we get 2 Hail Marys in, let's see what happens. But instead, the Cowboys do this. Beautiful throw.
And that could have ended terribly if he was tackled inbounds.
Oh, yeah. So they kicked the field goal, which, by the way,
not a chip shot.
Not a chip shot, but this was the 6th field goal for Billy Cundiff. The 7th, which is the record, was held by Chris Bonio of the Cowboys against Green Bay on a Monday night. That is one of the, if you ever want to do a list of top 5 just hot moments, it's Green Bay 96 going into Dallas on Monday night. All the talk during the pregame was, this is a monkey off our back. We're finally about to get this. I mean, the Packers, and they should have. They were going to win the Super Bowl that year. Yet they go into Dallas and Cowboys can't score for
Shut them out.
Shut them out with 7 field goals. But anyway, so here's the field goal that led to it. And I contend that this was like the first time in the modern era that the whole like, hey, we don't have to throw. We can throw to the sticks. I mean, throw to the sidelines and try to get it. So they end up going into overtime. Spoiler alert, the Cowboys win. This set off, as you said, they lost their first game. This set off a Cowboy run that, as I said, like in 85, it was fun because it was so improbable. Now, it ended the same way. They lost in the first round and kind of got beat pretty bad. I think it was like 29-14 or something like that. But it was fun to just be an underdog because we don't grow up with the Cowboys as an underdog. And in the 90s, the Cowboys definitely were not an underdog. But yeah, this is one of those games that for Dallas, I don't know if it meant a lot long term, but in the moment, that felt great. In the moment, that was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was shocked they won. I felt it was lucky, but then when you saw how the season turned out, Giants just were not that good of a team that season. And watching the Cowboys come out of the Dave Campo years, be winners, get into the playoffs. Panthers destroyed the Cowboys. That was a good Panthers team, but yeah,
wasn't that the Panthers team that made the Super Bowl?
Yeah, the Super Bowl that year with Jake Delhomme and Stephen Davis.
That's one thing you got to give Dallas credit for. I know it gets frustrating, but Dallas does tend to get beat by the teams that at least make the Super Bowl. It's not like they consistently get beat by a team that in the next round gets beat by 5 or 6 touchdowns.
Yeah,
it's frustrating in the moment, but at least when they lose, anyway. So let's backtrack a little bit. Let's go to 1995, and the Dallas Cowboys are trying for their 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years. Been a great start to the season, but man, the wheels were starting to feel off. This was right when the whole Barry Switzer thing was really starting to come to head. Yeah. I also think this was just a veteran team that was tired, had played a lot of football.
I always compare this team to the 79 Steelers, a team that was on their last legs. They were just running on fumes, as they would say.
And maybe for that 7, I always felt like if Dallas doesn't get upset by the Rams, Dallas finally beats the Steelers in that Super Bowl. I also, again, we can talk about if the Niners don't beat Green Bay. If Green Bay doesn't beat Niners, maybe the Niners, the whole telling of the 90s goes completely different.
Yeah, I think it would. But going back to what you were saying, 79, we'll just remind me because that's an honorable mention for me.
Oh, yeah, that's right. All right. So anyway, here we go. So Dallas had kind of started falling apart. The 4th and 1 had just happened. Yep. Again, spoiler alert, if you don't know, in 1995, Dallas out in Philadelphia. Looks like they have the game in hand. Wind gets real bad. Not really weather, but the wind gets real bad. Philadelphia kind of chews their way back in. Barry infamously goes for it on 4th and 1, not once, but twice in the same play, doesn't make it. So this team is struggling, and they are struggling against a really bad Giants team. Yeah. And in this game, it's just ugly. It comes down to this one drive, and I
need about 10 more yards.
I have said this to you many times, and I'm so glad finding this on YouTube. I think the Kevin Williams catch is one of the most not talked about seminal moments in Cowboy history. This three-peat does not happen if they don't beat the Giants this game, in my opinion. This three-peat does not happen if Kevin Williams doesn't.
Another first down. Aikman retreats. Still no blitz. The pass is caught by Kevin Williams. A catch for Kevin Williams. He's come out of today.
I want you to look. I know we have this era now where everybody only looks at stats. And so everybody wants to put Aikman with Terry Bradshaw. And I will contend that, yeah, there's some truth to that with Bradshaw, but I've actually come around on Bradshaw more. But especially Aikman, where they'll say, oh, he was a bus manager. This throw right here, in 1995, 2 quarterbacks could do it. Steve Young and Troy Aikman. And technically Steve Young couldn't because he was left-handed. But you get my point. Maybe Brett Favre too. But this throw is phenomenal. Over the linebacker, under the secondary guy, something you cannot. I mean, that's that thing when coaches look at players. You know, he's going to be a great quarterback if he can do that, because you can't teach this. You can't teach a guy, hey, I need you to throw over and under. It's just something that they can do. And then Kevin Williams, look at this dude.
Getting out of it today.
Look at that. God.
Keeps his eye on the ball.
Keeps his eye on the ball the whole time. Again, we can talk about underrated players. Kevin Williams, dude, he saved this team a couple times.
That was a great catch. I mean, he got open and he just lays out. Watch out.
I mean, if this isn't a playoff game or a Super Bowl, this is one of the iconic plays. If I were to do the top 10 Cowboy plays, top 5 Cowboy plays, this is a top 5 for me, easy. Maybe even a top 3. Like, this is up there with the Hail Mary, because I mean, this is not only a great catch, but is a great catch in such a big moment.
He stretches out to catch that ball.
A moment that's never talked about.
It really is. And I was actually really, really surprised. I went to look for this on YouTube, and somebody had literally labeled it Kevin Williams saves the season, because that's what he did, folks. We're not underselling this. Dallas does not. They still make the playoffs, but Dallas does not win the Super Bowl if this game is lost.
Cowboys still needed help that season because they needed the 49ers to lose a game, and luckily the Falcons beat the 49ers in Atlanta the next week.
Well, yeah, the whole famous thing of we went on the plane as the 2 seed. We got off the plane as the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't an era where, they don't have a bunch of phones. They're not all looking. Like, literally it was, hey, when we landed, the first thing we did was somebody called for scores, and they were like, and I remember Rich Dalrymple, boy, he's a trouble, hard to talk about now, but back in the day, he used to be the thing that all the Cowboy people went to. He talked about it like, it just completely changed the attitude of the team. When they found out and I think they actually found out mid-flight, but when they found out that San Francisco had lost and all they had to do was win, they're the number 1 seed, he said it just completely changed everything. But again, that doesn't happen without this.
The Cowboys are so popular during this time period that Rich Dalrymple, he was, the NFL Network, they do the America's Game segment where he was one of the people that presented on this 95 team. And he was also in the league. It
sucks. If you want to just go look at what all the issues, it sucks because I thought he was one of the good guys.
Yeah.
Like, he was always one of the guys that talked, to the press, and that's what he did. But he was so good at it, like you said, they would actually, I don't know of another America's team where they're talking to the press relations guy.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. And then also you can't talk about 95 without talking about, one, the beginning of the season game against the Giants, and then also the end of the season game against the Cardinals on Christmas Day, where Emmitt Smith breaks the record, and they use a lot of those footage for the Jerry Maguire movie.
Yeah, and I've told you this before. There's been people that are like, "Wait, the Cowboys won that game?" Like, yeah, why'd you? Oh, that movie.
The movie, yeah.
But yeah, that's okay. So we showed a good one, so I'll show a bad one now. We're wrapping up the top 5s.
I think you're going back and forth. I like this.
Yeah, so this is the last one for the Giants. Well, okay.
There's others we can talk about.
The last regular. Yeah, we'll talk the other one by law. But this is one, honestly, 2011, it led to another Super Bowl, but I don't really, I don't like, this doesn't have a lot of, I did not remember that. I messaged you as soon as I watched this. I'm like, I forgot the Romo thing. So in 3 of the games that Romo lost in that 3-year stretch, 2 of them, he basically was hurt. Because you remember the Philadelphia game, they literally said he collapsed in the shower because of his back. Portents of what killed his career.
Yeah, they started, what was it, Kitna that game or Kyle Orton?
What game?
The Philadelphia game in 2013. Romo didn't play that game. I remember that.
No, I'm talking about the one he played where they lost in the playoffs, or for the playoffs. 08, 09, or not 09, they made the playoffs. 3 years, Dallas went 8-8.
Yeah.
And that was the year that was the game that let me go and pause.
So
that was the game where they destroyed Dallas like 48-21.
That was 08.
Yeah. That was the last game of the year. Winner gets into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he was so hurt that after the game, he collapsed in the shower.
Oh, okay.
Like, you don't remember that? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I forgot in 2011, again, he came into that big game and he's hurt. But anyway, so in this game, this is one of the few ones that really wasn't like a crazy ending. Giants basically got out early and just kind of did just enough for the rest of the game.
Laurent Robinson led the comeback for the Cowboys in this game.
He had a great year that year. He's the one that, I mean, you knew it in the moment, but you want to tell him, look, I know you want to make the most money, but dude, if you go away, you'll never be good. I mean, you'll never be like this. I mean, Romo just had that ability. But anyway, again, I don't really have a ton to say about this game. This was right in that era where, you know, Romo was being blamed for everything. I've said this before, but 2013 against the Broncos is, I think, what changed everybody's perception about Romo. Like, completely changed everybody that knew what they were talking about, because they were like, this dude just carried this team and they still lost.
But people were still trying to trash him because of the one interception.
Well, and that's what I think changed. People started doing it.
Wait, he didn't allow 51 points.
Yeah, he didn't. He had them up with 2 scores twice, and you know. But anyway,
what he did was throw for 500 yards and like 5 touchdowns. And I played you in fantasy that week, and I won because of Romo.
Yeah, you cheated.
Okay.
But anyway, so
like perception about him was an all-time high around this point. We need to talk about. It started because of another incident that happened 4 years prior to this game, but we'll talk about that.
No, let's go ahead.
So, okay, the reason why this is in my top 5.
Hang on. Oh, wait, this one? Okay.
So the reason why this 2011 game is in the top 5 for me for Giant wins is because this team was struggling during this season. They got off to a hot start, then they just couldn't win. They knew how to beat the Cowboys. They beat them twice this season. Both games were good, but every other game they just had issues winning. But this is the de facto NFC East title game. Giants were struggling. They ended up figuring out a way to beat the Cowboys, and that propelled them. The next round, or the next game, was the wild card against the Falcons. They won, I think, 24-2. And then they played.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
And then the very next game, they went to Green Bay to play the 15-1 Packers. MVP Aaron Rodgers, unstoppable team. They just come off a Super Bowl win.
Shame you can't win a big game
in Arlington. Yeah. Green Bay goes in there and beats them by 2 or 3 scores, 37-21 or something like that. And then the NFC title game, go to San Francisco, ugly game, but they ended up winning that game in overtime, and they win the Super Bowl against the Patriots again. So this win for the Giants kind of propelled them in the direction that led him to Super Bowl 46
win.
And
it solidified the 07 one is not as much of a fluke.
Speaking of 07.
Yeah, I know. Here it comes. So as much as I talked about like the Giants, I don't think the Giants in Dallas have a ton of their games are good, especially, again, I was going to say this earlier, when Eli Manning and Romo played, it felt like, and I should have went back and done this. I want to bet that out of I think they had 20 something games against each other, that out of those, like 17 of them were all one possession, even last moment. I mean, I could have pulled something. We're not even bringing up, and I meant to bring the clip, the Des Bryant finger out of bounds game.
Oh, yeah.
We're not even bringing up, and I know this game technically didn't matter, but like the 26-15 Giants, the Cowboys tried all of a sudden last game of the year. They didn't need to try. They tried. We forget about that. That game didn't really mean anything. But like these teams, man, when Eli and the Cowboys, Eli and Romo, when they played, man, it was always, and that's why forever it was on Monday or Sunday night. Yep. It literally became the opening to Sunday Night Football until they started doing the whole thing where the Super Bowl team played a team on Thursday to begin the year. Usually Sunday Night Football started the season with the Cowboys and Giants. I contend it all started with this, and you're right. This, to me, this game, and I know people want to bring up the Romo fumbled snap. I don't even think about that because Seattle still was going to win that game. That was not, in people perception, that was not a last second get play. That was not if they kick, they win. That was if they kick, they've got the lead for 2 minutes. But if you watch the Cowboys that year, like almost every loss was them having the lead at the 2-minute mark and finding a way to lose. Yeah. But I think this is the game, and this is the one that hurts the most as far as a Cowboy. Well, maybe the 86 one still. But I can also contend that the 86 not winning is what set up the 90s dynasty, because I think you give Landry way more time if they win a Super Bowl or go to a Super Bowl in 86. But this is 07. This is a game going back, man. I watched almost the entirety of this game, and I am not saying this to knock Giants fans at all. Dallas should have won this game. Dallas made all the mistakes. Dallas in the first half ran with impunity against this giant defense, stopped running in the second half. I had forgot about the kickoff at the end of the half with the face mask or something that gave the Giants basically a free field goal in the last, I think maybe they actually even scored a touchdown in the last minute of the drive. All this should have been, and that's why I feel like this was the start of the, we'll just call, that's what 07 to now is, Noe. The should have been era. This should have been a win. This should have been the coronation of the Dallas Cowboys into the NFC title game. Yeah. This should have been the start of Romo and not a dynasty, but being a team that's making the NFC title game on consistency. It wasn't. And all the frustration begins right here with this game for me.
It's a tale of two halves. Like you said, the Cowboys dominated the first half with running Marion the Barbarian. Running all over. And, the Cowboys made one mistake in the first half, leads to a touchdown. But then the second half, they just couldn't run the ball. They couldn't play their game. And the Giants just kept plucking away.
Well, and you're starting to see that pass rush for the Giants get really good.
If you look how the season started for the Giants, they were 0-2. They should have been 0-3, but they made one key stop against the Redskins. And
that's right. They're the second team to go 0-2 and win a Super Bowl.
Maybe third. I think the Patriots in
did they start 0-2?
2 or 0-3? I think they started 0-2. A couple of blowout losses.
Did they start 0-2 with the Brady start?
Yeah, 0-3. 0-3 season.
No. The 0-1. Did they start? I think they might, because remember, he wasn't the starter. Drew Bledsoe gets hurt.
I have to look that back up.
Anyway, not even talking about the point of the show. That's what we do here. But we showed it earlier. But I don't think the Patrick Creighton drive, and I liked Patrick Creighton. I'm going to say that right now.
That's not the reason why they lost.
Yeah, it is. That's 100% the reason why they lost.
No.
Dude, if he makes the catch, it's at least a first down.
They should have never been in that position to begin with.
You're going to have third downs, dude. That's how football works.
They should have never. They were outclassing the Giants. They should have never let this team back in the game.
I don't disagree with you there, but at that point, they were back in the game.
It just goes back to my overall point that one play doesn't decide a game.
Oh, I think one play decides the games all the time. Okay. Now, you can have a game where multiple one plays decided, and that's a good point, but there are seminal moments, the catch. There are seminal moments, the catch too, Dallas versus San Francisco in 92. This right here is a seminal moment. One play, great teams make the one play. And this was a one play that, yeah, you're right, they shouldn't have been there, but they were. You got to live with that. So you pull up your loins and you girther or whatever that whole saying is. And you go out there and you do
I don't even know what saying that is.
Girther your I don't know. But the point is whether they should have or not, that was the position they were in. And, here's the end of the half. I can't remember what it was. I think it was like a.
So this is the play. Their one major mistake in the first half.
Yeah, the face mask.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the face mask.
Oh, okay.
And it was a face mask. This was the correct call. It was stupid. Is that Jock Reeves? What's his name? Jock Reeves?
Jock.
I think that was his name. But yeah, so they get a touchdown. I mean, you're talking about going in at half, up 14-7, you're good, and they get a touchdown, and that completely changed everything about this game. But still, I contend, I get your point, but you've got to make that catch, dude.
The funny thing about these Giants team, if they had Tiki Barber and a healthy Shockey, they would not have won the Super Bowl.
I don't disagree with that, especially Tiki.
Tiki retired.
Tiki was not a good player. He was a great player, but he was not he wasn't the locker room guy. Like, he tore locker rooms apart, like he's trying to do right now, actually.
Yeah, and I think that kind of hindered Eli's leadership development with the team because he had to basically.
That's a good point, man.
Be third fiddle to Tiki and Shockey. Luckily for Eli, Tiki decided to retire after 2006 after his career year for him, and then Shockey got hurt during the 2007 season. Ended up getting a ring, obviously, so that's good. But this was the first season and this was Michael Strahan's last season. It was his 15th year. He was contemplating retirement. The Hall of Fame defensive end for the Giants. He decides to come back. Had a good year, surrounded by a good cast. They have a pretty solid team overall, and then. Lo and behold, they ended up winning the Super Bowl that season, and one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time that really wasn't that entertaining, but what it meant.
Which one? 07?
Yeah, this
I
season.
I thought it was a fun Super Bowl.
I didn't really enjoy.
I was at your house watching it.
I was before we met. I think.
That's right. That's 2011's one.
The second one, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But
That's right.
And in this one, it was more of like a chess match, seeing how Tom Brady was basically just exposed in that game against an elite front four for the Giants, which kind of you were seeing this front four in this game, especially in the second half.
Okay.
This is the catch.
Dallas is up 17-14 at this point. Okay. 3rd and 14.
Mm-hmm. Crucial.
Romo doing Romo things.
Wide open.
I'm sorry, dude. That decides the game. Even if he doesn't score a touchdown, but if I remember right, looking at the all 22s, that's the film from behind. I think he scores a touchdown.
I mean, look at all that open green right there.
And Creighton could run, and so you're telling. I mean, it becomes a 24-14 game with 1 quarter basically left to play.
Yeah,
and then that happens. And I know a lot of people want to point to the last play of the game. Let me go do it.
And if you're looking at the decal on their helmet, that's number 21 for Sean Taylor, who passed away during this season.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that. I guess it's not going to. Well, here we go. It's not. Hang on. Sometimes it does weird things.
I don't know. He might end up being in the Hall of Fame, but he was a safety. No. He was safety for Washington during the 2000s, a star player from the Miami Hurricanes. I don't think he'll be in the Hall of Fame.
I don't think he'll ever even get close. He didn't play long enough. It's not like we were just talking about this with Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're getting into this when we're supposed to be talking Giants Cowboys, but this is what we do.
You always go off the wall.
Sean Taylor was great, but Sean Taylor has no accolades to even be like brought up for the Hall of Fame. Could he have been? Oh yeah, most definitely. But hey, you know what? After the first 4 seasons, Cowboys safety Roy Williams sure looked like he was going to the Hall of Fame.
Until people figured out, oh, he can't cover people.
Well, I also think that shoulder injury did a lot more than people realize. Speaking of shoulder injuries, now let's talk about fun stuff.
The 1993 season. So this is the first year I watched football.
Yeah.
And, just a little back. This is the last year of Phil Simms and Lawrence Taylor.
Yep. This
is the first season Dan Reeves is head coach for the Giants.
Yep.
Both teams are 11-4. This is kind of a comeback year for the Giants. They won the Super Bowl in 90. Parcells retires. Ray Handley becomes the head coach.
Keeps everybody, which was a shock. A lot of people, I remember this in the moment.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought, hey, okay, new coach. You're going to completely tear down.
Yeah.
Hanley didn't. They fire him. They bring in Reeves. Reeves loves older guys.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Rest in peace.
But he's like Parcells. Him and Parcells were very much the
R.I.P. by the way.
Parcells?
No, Reeves.
Oh yeah, he did die. I've been waiting on the Parcells one. They just hadn't happened yet. But not that I want to. I'm just saying.
God,
yeah, that sounded really vicious.
But yeah, there was a quarterback controversy because he wanted to start Hostetler.
And then Hostetler ends up going to the Raiders.
Yeah, because the 93 was the first year of free agency. Mm-hmm. And he decides to leave and go to a team that actually would appreciate him, and the Raiders did. They ended up winning. They got a playoff berth that year.
Yep, he was solid for his year.
One of the best mustaches in football.
One of the what?
Best mustaches in football.
Oh yeah, I agree. So anyway, this game, as I put on the thing, simply called the Emmitt Smith game. I will continue. First off, I will admit this. I told you this earlier today. I didn't remember in the moment the Giants being this great, but it was 1993.
I remember.
I ain't gonna pretend that I was watching fully every game. I was doing stuff, life.
This was Phil Simms' best year to me. Not like passing yards wise,
just being as a quarterback. Yeah. Lawrence Taylor had a little bit of a last breath. They were using him more in situational. In fact, that was a big point in this game was that he didn't start. But I will contend if Emmitt doesn't get hurt, it felt like, and this is part of it, it felt like Emmitt was about to have one of those days, like 200 yards, because that's what Emmitt Smith does. But then this happened. We all know it.
Breaks a free. Greg Jackson tackles him. Emmitt Smith separates his shoulder.
Now, here's the funny thing. I legitimately feel one of the most iconic moments. This is those moments that when you talk about great players doing great things.
Yeah.
I think I think obviously from the Dallas side, biggest game of this rivalry. I think if you were to rank the top 5 games in NFC East history, this is probably in that. And Yet when I was looking for stuff, I wanted to find like the defining plays after the injury.
Yeah.
It's not defining, it's grinding, man. This is the doubt. You want to point to what Jimmy Johnson talked about and how you win games. It's all about flash until it actually starts. This was an ugly NFC East. Just, you're going to swing at me. I'm going to swing at you. Rodney Hampton, underrated Cowboy herder. The problem was he was on some really bad Giants teams. So they, like, even in the 95,
especially 95 and 96.
Yeah,
Giants.
the 95 game, that part of the reasons why Dave Brown was having success against the Cowboys that game was because that power running game.
Now, when you say Dave Brown having success, what you really mean is some of these third down plays he was running. And
that's so frustrating when you're the better team, when you get those quarterbacks that do that.
And this was when Cowboys were coming off back-to-back losses, and they're watching a bad Giants team allowing their mediocre quarterback to run the ball for I think he almost had 50 yards rushing in the first half. It was so annoying watching it as a kid.
Oh yeah, it's still, dude, it bothers me to no end now, even though I know how sports works.
Yeah,
I know it, but when to see like the Houston Texans a couple years ago with Billy Butt at quarterback having their way when they needed it against the Cowboys, there's nothing more frustrating than that. But anyway, so this game is one of the most, like, you want to say back and forth, but it was so, the weather and what this game meant. I mean, so I want to explain to people that might not understand. When a man loves a woman, the difference in this game, I know this sounds crazy, but the difference in this game was a week of rest in all your games at home. That's it. But that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Especially when you're talking about, do you go to San Francisco or do you host San Francisco? Do you go to Philly or do you host Philly? And so this is, I mean, all 1 and 2 seeds mean so much, but I remember reading where Jimmy Johnson basically said, if you go into this game and Emmitt Smith doesn't get hurt and you play the game and you lose and you get the 2 seed and you're on the road, this Dallas team probably still could win. But when Emmitt gets hurt, that's the moment that this game became so important because he had to have the week off. I mean, and I'll contend he really wasn't even that great healthy in Green Bay. And I'll even contend maybe San Francisco. I don't know if the Buffalo Bills, one of the most iconic rushing performances happens if they're having to play that third game. And so that's why this game, it's funny because Emmitt Smith doing great things when he hurts, the iconic moment.
Yeah.
The game became important because Emmitt Smith got hurt. It's a circle, but it really is true. I don't think the Cowboys win the Super Bowl if they don't win this game.
I can't disagree.
This
was the importance of this game is very hard to.
This was This was an extra playoff game. Let's just go ahead and say that this was the playoffs.
This was the de facto playoff game. This was a NFC East title game. Like I said, both teams went 11-4, played different styles, both effective. Emmitt Smith ends up getting 229 yards from scrimmage. Amazing game. And a lot of it was after he separated his shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, the ramifications for this game. Oh, fun fact. I remember I used to watch NFL Countdown back in the day. Now I don't really watch any pregame. Back then, Chris Berman would do predicted scores. He got this score right.
One of the few he got right because he always wanted to go Niners, Buffalo in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And he would always look, I'm not trying to claim that they're Cowboy haters, but when you win and you're young and you're brash, you become disliked. I was actually going to bring this up earlier, but I'll talk about it now. But yeah, I remember that too. It's so funny you said that because I remember that and I remember thinking, God, that'll suck. Like Dallas, because again, I did have no respect for the Giants, partially because earlier in the season, the Cowboys walloped the hell out of the Giants. And then the Niners walloped the hell out of the Giants in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Again, though, put that game in New York when it's 30 degrees and it's windy and it's cold. I mean, it might be a completely different outcome. But I think this is the game that puts Emmitt Smith in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have made it anyway. But I think this, like when you tell the Emmitt Smith story, this is the story you tell.
This is what you remember. He didn't really he had a really good Super Bowl the prior year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he led the league in rushing 91, 92, 93.
You think about, and the first memory I have first memorable moment for me was 92 when he had that big breaking 5 Falcon players on Monday Night Football.
Oh, yeah. One of his, what they call the Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Run. Yeah. 100% agree.
So not many memorable plays by Emmitt. So like this here, I mean, it's just.
Well, that's what I was saying. Even in this game, he was so grinding. I think that's part of why he gets knocked when compared to Sanders, is there was nothing pretty about what he did.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine about Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders. Like the thing to me is the argument is so when people start talking about how good the lines were for both the Cowboys line was so far superior to the Lions, that's when I stopped the conversation. Because the Lions, like we talked about, they had Lomas Brown, Kevin Glover, Jeff Harding.
Mike Utley, though he did get paralyzed, but he was a really good lineman. Yeah, the Lions were not. Again, that's perception.
Yeah, you can tell me Barry Sanders was a better running back. I'm okay with hearing that because subjectively, there's a point to it. But don't ever use the excuse of an offensive line.
Well, and also, dude, this is the thing that frustrates me about whether you're talking about Emmitt, Joe Montana, Tom Brady. Why do rings matter for quarterbacks but not running backs? Because if we were having this conversation about 2 quarterbacks and one of them had 3 rings and the other one didn't, almost instantly every media people, every fan negates the no Super Bowls.
Yeah, they're gonna say Jim Plunkett's better than Dan Marino.
Okay, is Eli Manning a better quarterback than Tony Romo?
No.
I'm surprised it took that long because I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about, again, the Giants from 2005 to 2012 were really good.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a reason why. But
he was part of it.
I mean, he would have his stinkers, but like for the most part, he was a pretty good quarterback.
Do you know he never had a playoff win outside the 2 Super Bowl runs? He's 500 as a quarterback in the regular season. He's 13-17 against the Cowboys. Now, I know that's not all against Romo, but if you did the Romo, I bet Romo was probably most of those.
Now I'm looking back. I'm looking at every season. Yeah, 05 was the first.
That's not I researched that.
No, I mean, I'm thinking about it in my head now. I'm like, 05 they lost to the Panthers. 06 they lost to the Eagles. 07 they won. 08 they lost to the Eagles. 09 they didn't make it. 10 they didn't make it. 11 they won the Super Bowl. 12 up until 16 they didn't make it, and then 16 they lost to the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
That was that famous where Rodgers threw that Hail Mary at the end of the first half.
So again,
wow, I did not even think about that.
Yeah, so again, Eli will 90% of fans will immediately say Eli, who's the better quarterback? Eli, he won 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah, that is a horrible argument.
It's always been bad, and specifically again. Why is it quarterbacks get held to that standard, but then when it's Emmitt and Barry, it's, oh, no. Cowboys had a better team. Yeah. Okay, what about Joe Montana? Joe Montana's a Hall of Fame quarterback. No doubt about that. But why does nobody say, well, Joe Montana had Jerry Rice? Joe Montana had maybe the second best or maybe the best number 2 wide receiver consistently in history in John Taylor. Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody brings that up unless it's the running back and it's Emmitt and Barry. And it's just so weird to me. Anyway,
think about he had a great line. He had Wendell Tyler to start. Then he had Wendell Tyler and Roger Craig for a while. Then he had Dwight Clark before that at wide receiver. Freddie Solomon. Like the list goes on. He had a lot of talent.
How are we talking Giants Cowboys? But so I do want to bring this up though. Again, perception of this game. It's the Giants who tie it up and take it to overtime.
Yes,
the Giants, who again, it felt like they had all the momentum and everything, and they take it to overtime. So again, that perception of what we think of the game is, oh, Emmitt Smith hurt his shoulder, and then he basically carried the team to a victory. Well, no, again, this is another one, and you could say the Giants did this well in the 90s, where they just kind of muck around and they get Dallas into a street fight. And so, yeah, they kick the field goal, and they have all the momentum at this point. And, of course, Dallas ends up winning it in overtime, 16-13. But, yeah, it's, again, perception of what the game was in our mind, and then when you actually go look at it in the moment. Now, this is famously the only time John Madden went to the locker room after a game, because what Emmitt Smith did, and honestly, I don't care what your opinions are on the great running backs and all that. This game in the pantheon of football, and football's all about toughness, this is considered one of the toughest, most epic, and oddly enough, the other one's another Cowboy game, the Jack Youngblood game, the broken leg.
Yeah.
But this is considered epic, and especially on this drive in overtime where, and again, you talked about, there's nothing flashy about this. This is just grind away 4 yards, 5 yards through the air, not even running. But I think they realized that you couldn't run him a ton. And if you notice, they go more outside because outside you can shoulder you can shoulder the hit more. If you're running right up the middle, you can't help if the linebacker tags you. But look at this. I mean, it's just Emmitt after Emmitt after Emmitt after Emmitt to Darrell Johnson. And this is the moment the Dallas Cowboys won a.
This is such a classic Cowboys offensive drive in the sense that Aikman's just throwing like a 2-yard pass, but he has the athletes to make that 2-yard pass into a 20-yard gain.
Well, even just if you need 5, you get 6. If you need 4, you get 5. If you need 3.
Honestly, that's the thing I loved about Michael Irvin so much. That's why he became my favorite player. Anytime they needed 12 yards, he would get you 13. Just enough just to annoy the opposing team.
Wear you down, man.
Yeah. And then Emmitt Smith was really good at protecting himself. Like, he'll make the business decision, go out of bounds, but then he also had that powerful stiff arm.
It's so funny, like Franco Harris. Back in the day, he got
John Franco was a reliever, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Okay. For the Reds and the nasty bullpen. But he got knocked in the day because he would make those business decisions. And honestly, part of my
rest in peace.
Franco Harris to God. Yes, right.
Remember right before that? Yeah.
They did this. Oh, man.
Right before they were going to celebrate him, he died. Yeah.
Kind of like the Betty White get to 100.
Yep.
But Harris was like, why am I going to fight for 2 yards that don't matter? I'm not trying to prove my toughness. I'm trying to win football games.
Yep.
But anyway, so Dallas does what Dallas does in this era. And I know I annoyed you when I said this. They kicked too many field goals back in the day. They kicked way too many field goals. People don't remember that because they win 3 out of 4 Super Bowls. But Dallas was so perfectly fine with, okay, we'll just run it 3 times and kick a field goal because they knew they had the talent. But anyway, so they kicked the field goal. And I've never asked this from a giant perspective, what this felt like a giant fan. Like, did you think it was the moment? Was this one of those where you feel like you're going to do it all day long and then you end up not doing it? But anyway, the Giants win 16-13. I mean, the Cowboys win 16-13. That is our top 5 for each one. Look, we showed the Beckham catch in the little highlights at the beginning. Cowboys won that game. That's an iconic play. No doubt about it.
I think about that play. And then there was another play at the very end, the game-winning touchdown. Everybody was making memes about that because Tony Romo had an entire lifetime of pass protection to make a play.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing. Like, everybody's like, he could like make a pot of coffee in that pocket.
I don't remember that.
He was just so protected on that final. It was the final play of the game.
Yeah.
And this was prime Cowboy line. You had a young Frederick. You had a rookie Zach Martin.
Are you talking about the one where he threw to Witten?
I believe
with
so.
5
It
seconds
was just,
left?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you meant in this game. Or was it the same game?
The 2014 game. Yeah. So the thing about that game is the Giants lost that game to the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. That's why it's an iconic play, but it's not an iconic game.
Yeah. It was just funny to me just watching. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. 31-28 Dallas. Odell Beckham with a great catch. Let's see. Rome. No, it was Des Bryant touchdown. I guess it was a minute left. I thought it was like.
So I think you're also maybe confusing. There's a Cowboy win. I think it was 2015 to start the season, and Romo, it's on the game-winning play, has a ton of time. Like, he's just sitting. He rolls out. He's sitting. He steps up. He's sitting, and then he finds Jason Witten. You like that rhyming? Right down the middle, and they win the game like that.
Well, let me look. 2015.
It's the first game of the season.
September. It was at Dallas. No, this was in New York.
Okay, I don't remember that one then.
Yeah, this was. Yeah, I'll see if I can find the highlight. But basically, end of the game, Romo had a pocket for days.
I still think that's the one you're thinking of. You're putting 2 plays together. I actually, hang on. Let me see if I have that. Sorry, we're trying to. This is on the fly here. I don't know if I have that one because I actually had that play as one of the crazy plays.
It was just symbolic. That's when I was starting to think, okay, maybe the Cowboys have something here. Maybe this could be a special season because this was coming off 3 straight 8-8 seasons, but there was something different about this season because we had healthy DeMarco Murray. Romo was healthy. He had a career year. And he wasn't throwing for 5,000 yards, but he threw for almost 4,000, high percentage completion, low interception. He was in the top 5 in the MVP voting that season.
Sorry.
But yeah, finished 12-4, won the division, 3 seed, had a controversial win against the Lions in the wild card round. Controversial loss to the Packers in the divisional round, which I don't want to talk about because we will talk about that on another podcast.
Which, by the way, shows that football karma evens out. Because in the moment, and I still don't think it's as big of a pass interference as people make it out to be, but it is a pass interference. I have no problem saying that. So, yeah, that's football karma tends to work itself out. I'm looking at right now to see if, he dropped the ball. Oh, no, that's not the same one then. I don't know. Anyway, I think we're pretty much done. Do you have anything else you want to add? The Giants are a fun rival.
They were a fun rival.
Hang on. I'm sorry. Honorable mentions.
Yes, I want to talk about that.
So this is a fun one. I don't even know if you intended to do this. You did honorable mentions. Did I show the 81 Giant? Oh, they won.
That was a top 5 Giant win.
Yeah. Did I show it though?
I think you showed the field goal maybe.
All right, that works. So your honorable mentions, I don't know if you even meant this. They're honorable mentions, but they're also negatives against the team that actually won. I mean, not really negatives against the team that actually won, but the loser, the winner didn't get helped by the win.
Right.
79 Cowboys beat the Giants 28-7. They go to 9-5. Drew Pearson gets hurt after his 3rd touchdown. He plays, but he's basically out. And to be honest with you, he never quite was the same again.
Yeah.
Now, I know the car wreck in 84 or 83 also did a lot to that. But if you go look between 79 and 82, he just wasn't quite the same. And then in 06, I forget about the Monday night game. 06, Giants and Dallas, and Giants jump out huge on Dallas. Like, that was the moment. And I had just went to see the Cowboys in person the week before against the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
I got to see Tony Romo's first ever in-season touchdown pass right like 5 feet in front of me.
That's awesome.
And then the next week on Monday night, Giants just destroying the offensive line for Dallas. Yeah. And Drew Bledsoe is just getting dominated. Like, I felt bad for him.
Well, at that point, he was a statue.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can make the case he was always a statue.
But he made quicker decisions. Now he was older, still a statue, making not so quick decisions.
And a bad offensive line. Let's not bury that lead. Yeah. If they have a better offensive line, Drew Bledsoe is playing that whole year because Drew Bledsoe could still throw it.
Yeah.
But anyway, in that game, he gets benched. And I remember Romo came out and threw like a pick 6 almost immediately. But then he settled down and you started to see the whole, oh my God, this could be a good one. So I like how your honorable mentions, good job. I don't know if you planned that. The honorable mentions are wins for the team that won, but it didn't really in the end. And sometimes it happens. And that's where you and I always talk about, and I say this, I think we're in an era now where we don't just enjoy the sport. I don't mean me and you, but I mean in general. Champions. If you didn't win a championship, you suck. Yeah. Like that's
you trash.
You're trash. And it's like, are we ever, like, is there ever going to be a time where people look back at the 2019 to let's say 2026 Niners who might not ever actually win a Super Bowl, but also embrace that? Dude, they were doing innovative, new, cool things that you had never seen before. Or is it going to be they have to win a Super Bowl? And so part of the whole reason we wanted to do these shows is to embrace, and yes, the big games we pick are usually going to matter, but also just to embrace the rivalry. The fact that the Giants and the Cowboys don't have as many impactful games as you think does not take away from this rivalry. It's a fun rivalry. It's also a rivalry that I feel like Dallas just never is like, they're not down long in this rivalry. You look at right now, like I keep saying eventually the Giants are going to win, but like when? Dallas, and it's not even like I think the closest one was Thanksgiving last year. And that wasn't even that close. Like that was one of those classic. Well, Daniel Jones that year was just really good at not turning over, keeping the team close. They'll find a way. But even then, it never felt. I mean, it was finished 28-20. And you and I had this argument in the moment. Like, yeah, I never doubted that game. You're like, oh, it was pretty tough. I'm like, yeah, no, I never thought it was going to be a.
It was a close game, and then the Giants failed on a 4th down,
and that changed everything.
That changed it. It was a 2-score game up until the final second.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2022 season, last season, or the season prior, it was 2 1-score losses. The Cowboys swept. So it was 2 close games.
When's the last time the Giants beat Dallas?
It was the 2020 regular season finale.
Oh, that's right. It didn't matter.
So yeah, since 2016 season ended, the Giants have only won 1 game, and it was that meaningless.
Now they did cause the 2020 season for Dallas to go down the drain.
It ended up not mattering though.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, again, it's so weird how this has happened a few times. The Romo against the Giants as well.
Yeah.
The famous Romo getting hurt in 2010. Everybody's like, oh man, that changed the season. Now Dallas was like 1-4. Now it felt like Dallas could still catch up because I remember their schedule and all. But yeah, their defense was terrible. Same thing in 2020. That injury was way impactful, but Dallas was already headed down a.
Oh, the injury to Dak. Yes.
Yeah, the injury to Dak. So that's what I'm saying. Like in 2 big iconic games as far as they've hurt the quarterback. But when you really look at the season, in either one of them, Dallas wasn't, I don't think, and that's 10 years apart exactly. I don't think either one of them was going anywhere.
So every 10 years, the Cowboy quarterback. 2000, Troy Aikman.
Oh, yeah.
The concussions. The final one was by LeVar Arrington that ended it all.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Let's go back. Okay, 1990. Oh, week 15. They were 7-7.
The Aikman injury and then Babe Laufenberg.
Yeah. And you realize how terrible Laufenberg was.
Oh God, that was an era where all you had to be as a backup was say some cool things in the film room, like, "Hey, watch the safety." My God, he's so smart. And then he goes out and he can't even throw to the safety.
Every 10 years since 1990, a big injury to the quarterback position.
So in 2030, be prepared, whoever's quarterback for the Cowboys. All right, final thoughts when you look at the Giants. Final thoughts. What do you think of?
Team I respected. They just never had a long run of dominance over the Cowboys. Cowboys have had a couple of long run dominance, like 7+ years. But the games that were competitive, they had big ramifications. I've always respected this team. I always loved watching this game. That's my overall thoughts. They are lower on the list just because there are just lulls there where it was really nothing like from the 60s to the most of the 70s, a lot of the 90s.
Well, you said it best, because I'll bring a point, because, of course, we know the list. So I've been kind of peeking ahead and starting to pull things. The next one, it's in chunks as well. But after that, even Washington, who hasn't really been a huge rival 15 years, there's the 2012 game was huge.
There's a lot of memorable moments, like the 2005 game with Mark Brunell.
Don't ever bring that game up to me, you slut. I hate that game.
The 95 season where they swept the Cowboys, but they finished 6-10.
Well, we'll talk about that. There was a stretch where Dallas couldn't beat the Redskins. Washington.
Well, they were called the Redskins at that point.
Yeah, so we can do it. But there was stretches.
It was because Troy Aikman was trying to help Norv Turner.
Dude, that is a real thing. Not that he tried to help.
Yeah.
That is a real belief.
Yeah.
I was living up here. I'd moved up here the first time, and I listened to sports radio and the ticket and all that, and that was legitimately what callers believed. But my point is for those, I'm going to have to exclude really great moments, like just peeling back.
Yeah.
Washington is one of them, right? So right now, one of my favorite games, I wasn't old enough, but one of my favorite games is the Joe Theismann Happy Birthday game.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't even make the top 10.
Yeah.
And then also I go back to Clint Longley. How, man, that is an iconic moment, but is that really one of the best rivalry moments? Because again, I always think of the whole season. Cowboys didn't even make the playoffs that year.
Yeah.
So again, that's the difference with this one. With this one, it was man, I got to find something. It's not as easy as you think. Yet, again, from 2007 to 2017, it felt like every one of these games was a 21-17, 30-28. Winner's probably going to score in the last 5 seconds. And that is why it is a top 5 rivalry of the Dallas Cowboys. He's intern Noah. I'm Terry Bennett, and this has been OutDrank The Coverage.